just about to get underway, but they've been put on pause for a little bit due to some inclement weather. Also, the Phillies and Yankees, that one is just about to get underway momentarily, and first pitch between the Mets and the Braves is expected here in a few minutes. Moving on to the NBA, got some finals from earlier today. Raptors took down the Heat 107-103. Fred VanVleet scored a career-high 36 points for Toronto. In overtime, the Nuggets took down the Thunder 121-113, and the Pacers topped the Wizards 111-100. Currently one game in progress. It's the Pelicans who lead the Grizzlies 19-10 with just under 4 minutes to go there in the first quarter. Moving on to the NHL, it's the qualifying round robin. The Hurricanes took down the Rangers by a final score of 4-1 earlier today. Also, the Jets topped the Flames 3-2. Got a game in progress right now. The Las Vegas Golden Knights lead the Dallas Stars 1-0 with about 4.5 minutes remaining there in the first period. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, I'm Curran.
Your state, your team, your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Bowers awaits the shotgun snap, sends the tight end in motion. They roll right. Bowers throws, pass is knocked away. Eli Sullivan knocks the football away, and the Huskers have a goal line stand, taking over at the one.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben Mclaughlin.
And welcome to another week of Sports Nightly. Thank you so much for spending some of your Monday night with us. We do appreciate that. We'll try to keep you entertained and informed over the next couple of hours as we welcome you back from another summertime weekend. Feels like fall outside. Temperatures have really plummeted the last couple of days. Makes you start to think about some college football. Well, we are delighted to welcome a new host on the show. His name is Ben Mclaughlin. Ben, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself back here on Sports Nightly?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Born and raised in Omaha, got a 2-month-old daughter who got some quality dad time the last few weeks, and now back in the saddle. It's weird. It feels like forever ago that I was on the air with you last, but it also seems like just yesterday that the 2 weeks was starting. So it feels like forever, not enough time all in one.
Well, you've been missed. Tim and Josh filled in admirably in your absence, and Tim was ready to go tonight in case you weren't quite up for it.
Tim's the pinch hitter on the bench with that's always working in the cage through the first 8 innings of the game just in case.
Yeah, just keep himself warm and loosened up. Well, the one thing you haven't missed is you have not missed any solid plans for Big Ten football in the last 2 weeks. Here we are, August the 3rd, still don't have a schedule. Still, the football coaches are all waiting to see if they start practice Friday, which is when the initial day was to be set. Are you surprised that we're sitting here in early August with this much uncertainty about the fall?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because you feel like, number one, that a decision should be imminent, right? I mean, that's kind of the sense that I get, is that we should have some sort of decision, but at the same time, you almost feel like everyone seems to be waiting for somebody else to make the first move. It's almost seemed this way since the whole coronavirus started back in March, with the cancellations all the way through today. It's like we all know decisions need to be made. We all know something needs to be done. We all know something needs to happen. We all know there's questions that need to be answered, but it's like you're not quite sure who's going to make that first move, who's going to make that first announcement. And there's been little things here and there that may try and indicate or sway your opinion one way or the other. But, I mean, I'm sure you're the same way, Greg. I get people literally asking me every day what's going to happen with football. And my answer changes in a span of 24 to 48 hours based on what's in the news that day. So, I think we're all still kind of waiting for, the direction. But as far as we know, it's still a go. And, here we are, as you said, already in August, where fall camp should be starting, that we should be, getting some type of decision here pretty soon. And the coaches need to know what type of shape do we need to get our players in. They're operating under the assumption that there's going to be a season, but, you've even had another Big Ten campus today shut down those voluntary workouts in Northwestern. So it's like, I'm literally like a flag blown in the wind on what direction I think this fall is going to happen.
You're right. On Northwestern, they had one positive test, so they put a halt to workouts for a couple of days. They said they may resume on Wednesday. They want to test some individuals who were around the one that tested positive to see if it extends any further out. So it's a temporary halt is the way they're putting it out of the Wildcat camp. Now, the Huskers started the 20-hour clock back on the 24th of July, so they're into their third week of that, which is a lot of time to be around your position players. We've not heard any negativity that has come out of that, because the guys have tightened quarters a little bit, that there's been any positive testing out of the Nebraska camp. But they're, like everybody else in the league, still kind of wondering, does Friday, August the 7th, which is in the football calendar listed as the first day of fall camp, does that go or not? Last week, to recap last week for everybody, the SEC says we're a go, but not until September the 26th. The Pac-12, same thing. We're a go, September the 26th. Both of those leagues, the Pac-12 and the SEC, are going conference only. The ACC had come out and said, we're going to start on the 12th of September, so a week late. We're going to go with conference games plus one, and teams could pick one non-conference game to save. The ACC did that thinking they could protect some long-time rivalries between teams in their league and teams in the SEC, but then the SEC says, no, we're just going conference only. So now the ACC teams could go pick somebody else in their non-con to save, whether it's a team out of the AAC, whether it's an FCS school. That's going to be up to them. I've not heard where they've proceeded from that. We were supposed to hear today something from the Big 12. Their presidents and chancellors met today. Here we are, 11 minutes past 6 o'clock, still nothing from the Big 12 conference. Tomorrow is another one of those Board of Governors conference calls, which there was one of those about 10 days ago where they tabled this issue to talk about fall sports championships, which does not include FBS football, but it certainly would include Husker volleyball. It would be news for Husker volleyball and soccer and cross country. Those seasons also kind of waiting for marching orders from the NCAA. So we may get something tomorrow. There's been some speculation that Kevin Warren, the new commissioner of the Big Ten Conference, is waiting for the Board of Governors to say something before he jumps in with a decision what to do with football. But I can tell you that there are a lot of anxious people in North Stadium right now, in that coaching staff, in the athletic department, going, come on, we need to, if we're playing September the 5th, we need to know, because that is only 4 weeks away from Saturday, and so the clock would really be ticking, Ben, if they get the go sign here in the next couple of days.
It wasn't that long ago that we were sitting here and saying that, the one thing that college football has on their time is on their side is time. Well, that time has evaporated. I mean, that time's gone now, and this is kind of what was making us then feel a little more comfortable, now for the same reasons making us feel uncomfortable. The amount of things that need to get prepared, and I'm speaking just in terms of Nebraska on a small scale, on one school scale, let alone a conference, even on a national picture. All the things that need to be answered, all the questions that need to be answered, and all of the situations, logistics, personnel, all those questions that need to be answered for an athletic department to get put in place, advertising, that affects us. Everything that needs to be kind of talked about and accepted and then planned for. It's time to put those in motion now, because you can't just roll the ball out on September with a whatever and say, okay, go play. There are a lot of things that need to be, put in place before that happens. And I don't know that for every passing day that the more difficult that's going to be. And the one thing that you don't want, and we're starting to see that with Major League Baseball, is something that's just thrown together, and not taken seriously or whatever, and then have it all come crashing down after a couple of weeks. So you really hope that, you've got plans A through D right now for all the possible scenarios, and the people behind the curtains can as soon as they get word one way or the other, can start implementing those plans immediately, and it's not a wait and react type of thing. They can try and get out in front of it the best they can. Because there's a lot of Greg, you know what goes on in game day. There's so many things that on just a normal, typical game day are going to be affected. And now with the curveball and the differences that this year would throw, I mean, this is unprecedented for any university. So these are tough problems to solve.
They sure are, and there's an awful lot of logistics to be worked out. We don't even know if Nebraska, if the new schedule comes out, if they're going to have a home game for the first game or not. We don't know. I mean, all that is still up in the air, and you've got a lot. I mean, these director of ops who have to go put travel plans in place, I mean, they are going to be in scramble mode once they get the schedule from the league and it's announced and we're a go time. And that certainly could change. I've always felt like the best plan would be conference only, 10 games. Start it when you're supposed to start September the 5th. Build in 3 or 4 bye weeks so that if you have a big infection week, you can shut her down for 7 or 10 days, get your guys healthy, get back and go, and then maybe have to manipulate the schedule as you move along. To me, that seems like the best plan to try to get as much college football in the fall as you possibly can. And maybe that's what Kevin Warren's going to do with the Big Ten. We hope to hear something, and I think you almost have to hear something from him this week about all of this. Ben mentioned Major League Baseball, and I'll put to rest these rumors that Ben was not with the Cardinals on the casino trip that they took that decimated that team. You were not doing that, so we'll take that off the list. The Cardinals are shut down until the end of the week. That's really hit them hard. In fact, they seem to now be the bigger story. The Marlins seem to be on the recovery. They put out a list today that they had no more positive tests for the Marlins. They may be a lot closer to playing than the Cardinals, who are shut down. Everybody else in baseball is playing, as Tim just gave you a couple of scores that are already underway tonight. And I'm told that Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, really got after Tony Clark, the players' rep, on Friday, saying, hey, you've got to get your guys under control. If we're going to do this, guys can't be going out to clubs. They can't be going to casinos. They've got to try to keep themselves quarantined within hotels or wherever they are going. And so Major League Baseball is still trying to fight the fight on this thing. The NBA and basketball is so much easier, I think, to bubble. Same thing with hockey. It's easier to bubble those teams than it is Major League Baseball. So they're having some success. They haven't been shut down at all, and they're getting their seasons back underway as well. So that's been fun. As a sports fan, Ben, there's been a lot more to talk about and watch over the last couple of weeks since those 3 sports leagues now are underway.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks of baseball, I'm always all in anyway. And I kind of had mixed feelings. You know, I kind of had some bitter feelings towards Major League Baseball on both sides. You know, with the owners and the players union, I kind of thought maybe that might sour me to the sport a little bit, but it really hasn't. I think my just love for the sport ended up trumping my personal feelings towards, you know, why they're starting that late. You know, one thing that, I mean, I've watched a ton of baseball over the last couple of weeks. The one thing that I'm surprised to find myself, Greg, I kind of thought it would be interesting and kind of fascinating watching baseball on TV without fans, and I thought it'd be kind of a, you know, add a different wrinkle. I don't want to say I would enjoy it, but it would be like just, you know, you'd be so fascinated with watching them play without any fans. It's bothered me a heck of a lot more than I thought it would. I mean, watching all these games with no fans in the stands and the ambient noise, and I agree that it would be really awkward hearing nothing, hearing these guys. I mean, I was watching the Reds play yesterday, and Trevor Bauer was pitching against the Tigers, and literally every pitch you can hear him grunt like a tennis player at Wimbledon. I mean, that's so unheard of to think of in baseball. And it's bothered me so much more than I thought it would, the games that I watch. And, yeah, it's just not something that I expected. But, you know, I just watched DJ LeMahieu of the Yankees hit a home run at 4 rows up at Yankee Stadium in right field. Instead of watching fans fight for the ball, you watch it ricochet around seats. It's just right. It's such a different feel than what I'm used to, and I'm surprised how much it bothers me.
Yeah, it's different. You certainly notice it on pop-ups to down the lines when the cameras pan out a little bit. I think the cutouts have been helpful. At least you have something to kind of distract you behind home plate, so that center field camera gives you that look. You knew it would be different, and the NFL may look a lot different, too, if they completely limit fans, and it sounds like we're going that direction in the NFL as well. So you're right, it's going to take an adjustment. But, Ben, I would rather have the games going than not going at all. I'd rather be sitting there watching the Yankees and the Phillies or the Royals and the Cubs tonight than not having anything at all going on. And so it's been fun doing that. And then obviously the NBA in their bubble with no fans, they can go with a tight enough camera angle that it doesn't really show off too much. All right, those are some of the headlines and some of the stories we'll be dealing with on the program tonight. Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com coming up here in a couple of minutes. Here's another chance for us to remind you that we now have a text line here with the Husker Sports Network. Our U.S. Cellular text line is also doubling as our call-in number for you to call in and join the program. We opened the doors on this late last week. Some of you may not have heard that. Our new number now is area code 531, which, by the way, is a new area code in the state of Nebraska. 531-500-4686. So 531-500-4686. That is our new U.S. Cellular text line. It's also our new Woodhouse Auto Family hotline number for you to call. If you want to send us a test text tonight, our guys will reply back to you to say that you got it. Then you can lock it into your phone. So if you have any thoughts you want to relay to the program, but you can't get to a phone, or you're driving and you don't want to call us up, but you can, well, you're not supposed to text and drive. Let me rewind that. You didn't hear me say text.
You're in a
and
passenger
drive.
seat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there you go. Or if you're sitting and waiting to get on a bus or something and you want to share a thought with us, we would love to hear from you again on our now U.S. Cellular text line at 531-500-4686. Ben, we've heard from a lot of folks over the years, man, I can't really sit there and call you because I'm in a crowded, noisy area or something, but I'd love to give you my thoughts on something. Can we do a text saying, well, we heard you, we've responded, here it goes, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of people that I'm sure just don't like talking. I'm sure it's just like computer or Twitter or whatever. There are a lot of people that just prefer, not to call in. So, yeah, hoping to hear from a lot more fans, a lot more people, and, a lot more opinions. I'm sure there's some text that we probably won't be able to reply to or give attention to, especially maybe after a Saturday. But, to open this avenue for fans that maybe aren't comfortable talking on the phone or don't want to, or, whatever else. Yeah, I mean, any chance we get to hear from the fans is good.
We heard late last week from Ron in Omaha, Wyatt in Alma, Kurt in Grand Island, Glenn in rural Nebraska, Brian and Carroll. Who else did we hear from? Dale in Denton, Texas, Jim in Milford. Scott texted us and did a test with us. So, glad to have you lock that into your phone, put it into your memory, into your files, so you can kick out a text to us. This will also be operable for Big Red Reaction when we have that up and running after a Husker football game. So 531-500-4686 is our new U.S. Cellular text line. And also, that's our new phone number for you to call and be a part of the program as well. When we come back, we'll check in with Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. That's coming up next. Spend some time with his new daughter, Kennedy. Glad to have Ben back in the saddle with us here tonight. We always love chatting with Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. We have him on weekly during the college football season. We've checked in with him about monthly during this off season to get some of the latest, and Adam joins us now from Chicago. Adam, great to have you with us. You've been really covering the Iowa story with the internal investigation that they did into some racial unrest within the Hawkeye program. That became public late last week. I know you spoke with head coach Kirk Ferentz. Is that now behind us? Have they got that thing taken care of? Is there still more to come with that deal?
Well, I think for the most part it's over. But even Kirk acknowledged that hey, the work that's done from here on is going to be important, because I think everybody has felt good about the progress that's been made in the program, just in terms of the environment and the openness to discussing some of these issues. But if players feel the way that they did for much of his tenure, at least a lot of the black players, if that's the case, and in 3 months, then you've got a problem. And so I think there's definitely an effort, because this was outed in a sense publicly, that they will look at everything with a much more attentive and critical eye as far as what they're doing to create a more inclusive environment in the program. Because because he's Kirk Ferentz and because he's a long tenured coach and a successful coach, you're able to survive something like this. But if it continues and there's a second wave of allegations, it's going to be a lot harder. So I think it's essentially over for the moment, but something that I think everybody around Iowa is continuing to monitor, especially the former players. They were very important in bringing these issues to light. And Kirk Ferentz has said repeatedly that they were, in many cases, the most important resources he had in terms of figuring out what happened and what needs to be changed there.
Did he seem remorseful to you?
It's a tough question. I think to a degree on some of the macro issues, Greg, yes. But we asked them, Michelle Steele and I, who did a terrific job with me reporting this piece, we asked him some direct questions like, did Chris Doyle do anything wrong? And he was reluctant to say so. He was still very complimentary of Chris Doyle, the longtime strength coach who they separated from back in mid-June after these allegations came out. Most of those allegations targeted Chris Doyle. So Kirk is very loyal to Chris Doyle. And, Chris Doyle did a very good job in terms of developing players and helping them get to the NFL. But there's some very troubling things that were alleged. And one incident that, we even confirmed with Kirk Ferentz involving one of their former wide receivers, Darrell Johnson-Koulianos, who was made to wear a trash can and run around the practice field as a punishment when there's hundreds of people there. I mean, I just don't understand how that's okay, and the pattern of that behavior, at least to be acknowledged as wrong. I mean, I think that's part of this process is not just apologizing for how players felt, which Kirk did to his credit, but not really acknowledging the wrongdoing or at least the mistakes that were made, at least by this very important person on the staff, and Chris Doyle.
Yeah, and I asked that, Adam, because you've been around so many of these guys. That's not really in their DNA to admit that they were wrong on something. I mean, even after games they lose, they won't admit that the game plan wasn't very good. I mean, that's just kind of the way they're wired.
Right. And, again, you have a long-time friendship. You have a connection with the coach who has been instrumental in the success Iowa has had. I mean, you know where Iowa typically ranks in recruiting. It's not a top, although the recruiting class, for this next year, is very good. They're not a top 10 recruiting program. Kirk's very upfront about that. But they've had 75 players selected in the NFL draft during his 20-plus seasons as head coach. I mean, that shouldn't happen. And I think it's a credit to both Kirk and Chris Doyle for why that's happened, along with certainly the players and others. But you're right. There is a reluctance to admit true mistakes, true wrongdoing. And that did continue, even though there was certainly, a degree of remorse, just general remorse shown by Kirk and Gary Barta, the athletic director.
Yeah. Again, visiting Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. He covers college football for ESPN.com. Let's go to the Pac-12. This has been a wild couple of days out there. Was this just the perfect storm of the virus, social unrest, the NIL thing coming up, name, image, likeness coming up? Was it all this coming together of this? Is that how you read this?
Right. Well, again, it was an organized movement, took place over the last month or so, and I think really the strongest force behind it is the fact that a lot of these players in the Pac-12 and even in other leagues don't feel completely safe with the protocols and the safeguards essentially in place at some of these programs. And they started talking to each other and how are you guys testing and what are you guys doing if someone has to be quarantined and some of these other questions. And they realized that they all had some concerns, and they obviously also were paying very close attention to all of the social justice campaigns and protests and everything that's been happening since late May. And so I think those are the two main issues here: the health and safety protections now and even in the future. I think the most important item they had on that list of demands, Greg, was the long-term medical coverage after 6 years after your eligibility to cover obviously injuries, but also if there are lingering effects from getting COVID-19, which, we're seeing that's possible, unfortunately. So there's that. And then there's the racial injustice component, which I also think is one that the Pac-12 will be proactive about. Then you get into revenue, get into the 50-50 revenue split that they want, and programs to be restored at Stanford, and not having other programs cut in the league, which is possible, especially if there's no football season. So that's where it gets trickier, but it's a broad range of demands. You always want to come out and negotiate from your strongest position and then work towards an agreement. So this is where they're at right now, and certainly the leverage players have as we're on the eve of trying to play a season amid a global pandemic is probably they've never had as much as they have right now.
They have some time, right? I mean, they're not starting until the 26th of September, so the league has a few weeks, right, to kind of iron some of this out?
Well, yeah, right. So today is the start, at least in most of the programs in the Pac-12, of the summer access period, the enhanced summer access period, 20 hours a week. Our understanding is that most of these players, even though they're part of this movement, are still working out with their teams, and they want to work out with their teams. But the start of camp is critical, and that can start as early as August 17th for the Pac-12. I think the hope is to have some type of agreement by then, or you'll actually see, a number of players opt out. We're actually already seeing that. Washington State and some other places have had players decide to opt out because of their concerns about the coronavirus. But as far as opting out because of this movement, I think that would really begin in earnest around the time that training camp begins if some of these demands have not been met.
I'm visiting with Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. Let's bring it back to the Big Ten. They were the first ones to step out on the ledge and say conference only, and I think that surprised a lot of people around the country. I know Bob Bowlesby of the Big 12 was caught off guard by that. Were you surprised that Kevin Warren went that direction several weeks ago?
I was not. That was what we were hearing in the league for a number of weeks. I think it just made the most sense because they have been communicating with all their doctors or medical experts about coronavirus since March. And, I think they just felt a degree of comfort just playing one another versus bringing in teams especially from lower divisions or from lower level group of 5 programs that might not have the same access to testing. And then you have a game where not everybody has been tested at the same level and you have an outbreak. And that's what everyone's trying to avoid. I mean, if this season does start, and it's still a big if at this point, what coaches have told me is the worst thing that can happen is you start the season, then you have to essentially stop the season. So, that's what everyone's trying to avoid. And I think by building in a conference-only schedule with some increased flexibility in terms of games, that's what the Big Ten is trying to achieve. And you've seen that at least 2 other conferences, the Pac-12 and the SEC, have also gone with the conference-only model.
Yeah. All right, some different mixed bag of news in the Big Ten, right? I mean, Michigan State's had issues. Obviously, Rutgers had issues a few weeks ago. Some programs seem like they're doing okay. I guess we all just should buckle up and get ready for a wild ride over the next 3 months, right?
Right. Yeah, it's going to be like this, and especially with some of the contact tracing measures that are in there. Guidances, if you've been in close contact with somebody, you have to quarantine for 14 days, even if you aren't showing symptoms or have tested negative. Those things are all potential, not even potential, likely roadblocks for teams at times this season. So, again, I think getting into the contact portion of preseason camps, which we still don't know when that can begin in the Big Ten. I know coaches are very anxious about that, but that haven't been given clearance for that. That's going to be interesting to see if we're going to see more of these mini outbreaks or large scale outbreaks, or teams that are having to stop activities for a week or 2 at a time. Again, as a Power 5 coach told me last week, Greg, it's not so much about prevention as much as everybody would love to prevent this virus. They're much more concerned about mitigation and preventing this from turning into large scale outbreaks, because positive tests are going to occur. It's just up to these schools and these teams to handle that as best they can and prevent 1 or 2 positive tests from turning into 20 and the team having to shut down for 2 weeks.
Right. All right, well, Major League Baseball is underway. What's your confidence level anytime Craig Kimbrell takes the mound for your Cubs?
Not very high. This move does not look like it's worked out. The fortunate thing is they're still finding ways to win, even with a clearly limited bullpen. The starting pitching has been good, and they're hitting the ball pretty well. So it's painful to see him out there, unfortunately, but everybody else seems to be doing okay on that roster.
Yeah, they're home tonight against the Royals. Adam, as always, we appreciate it. Hopefully we start doing this on a weekly basis if we get this season underway.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely, Greg. And hope you and your family are good, and hope everybody crosses their fingers for football season.
Adam Rittenberg, good stuff as always. He joined us on our Sports Nightly Hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family. Sharp Ben Mclaughlin back with you. Thanks again to Adam Rittenberg for spending some time with us. And we did talk about the Pac-12 situation that bubbled up over the weekend. John texted us, Ben, and said, I'm ready for college football. Let's get it going, fans or not. Then what's it about, like USC and some of those other teams where the kids are saying we're not going to play unless we get some kind of special treatment. Your thoughts about what's happening out on the Pac-12, and you think this is going to kind of spread around the country a little bit?
Yeah, it certainly was unexpected to see that, to see all of the that movement, I guess, for lack of a better word, that came from the Pac-12. Of course, this is the time where, we've talked about a lot of different things on the show, in recent months with, just kind of the civil unjust and the systematic racism in the country. And I think that what we talked about then applies even here, Greg, with people's ears are kind of open right now. And I feel like, this is a time where a lot of people are overly sensitive when it comes to any issue, really. But this is an opportunity for those that feel like their stance and their feelings fall on deaf ears. Maybe not the case right now with everybody is kind of heightened awareness of what's happening in our country. I think there are a lot of Pac-12 athletes that saw this as an opportunity to take advantage of where we're at right now with the amount of people listening and who this goes to. I think this does, however, I think it's a slippery slope, because I think for every athlete that you have that is for this movement, you have another athlete that is coming from a situation that not a great one. Watching Last Chance U, there are guys that in that circumstance that are sleeping in their cars or taking care of kids, that are doing literally everything they can, driving 2 hours to practice, driving 2 hours home, then working a night shift just to afford a place to sleep. They would do anything to have the right or the opportunity to play college football somewhere without having those demands. And then you have, on the other hand, other athletes that are saying, we're not going to play unless this, and this. I think you're going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, whether they agree with your cause or not. There are a lot of people that would gladly accept that opportunity, that scholarship, that opportunity to play and get a free education while still playing football without having to meet these so-called demands. I think it's great that young people want to use their voice and their platform to stand up for what they believe in, but I also think there comes a time, especially in collegiate athletics, when you are technically an amateur, are you really in the position to make demands when there are so many other student athletes that would die to be in your position, would die to get that scholarship, would die to have a free place to live and a free place to eat and a free place to play football and a free place to learn? I think it's great. Again, it's a double-edged sword. It's great for those people that want to use their voice and stand up for what they believe in, but I think it's also going to make a lot of people upset, specifically people that didn't get that opportunity, that are their age, and not just the crotchety old people who have a certain set of beliefs in their belief system. It's not necessarily only that crowd now that is going to be affected. It's also the people that didn't necessarily get the same opportunity you did.
Some of the things that they raised, I think, are really valid points, and some weren't. I mean, the health care past your college eligibility, okay, I don't think 6 years is right, but maybe a year or two, that might be okay, because you may have a lingering effect from your days that initially gets taken care of. But I don't know that you can go 6 years out. I mean, I don't know that you can be covered for that long a period of time, but maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months, maybe it's something like that there's a common ground in there. Demanding that other sports be put back in, that's really above and beyond should be your sphere of influence in my thoughts. That's got to be made by other people that are dealing with budgetary decisions. And trying to limit how much coaches make, This is still America, where it's capitalism and you get what the market pays you. That's what this has all been built on. I don't think that's valid. But I also think if you want to opt out and not play, that's fine. That's your choice. You shouldn't have your scholarship ripped from you. But you probably then shouldn't be able to be around the team in the weight room. You probably shouldn't be around. I mean, do you lose some of your rights that come with that scholarship and you participating? You can't take away their eating privileges at the training table, but maybe they have to go eat with the general student body at a dining hall on campus instead of being able to eat the training table if they want to opt out. So I think there's some valid points in there, and I think administrators and people will be wise to try to bargain a little bit with these guys, but there are also some ones you're going, okay, there are going to be consequences for you not wanting to play anymore, not doing some of these things.
It sounded almost like a union, is what it sounded like. And your first thought of a union, okay, well that's a place of employment. That's a you're getting compensated. To me, it's such a blurry line because of that word amateurism. You know what I mean? Like what I think those athletes don't necessarily understand. And, I mean, even to the level of Kansas State, Greg, it wasn't that long ago that they were under the microscope for comments that a student on their campus made. I understand it. I believe me, I get it. And I think that, you know, if that does apply to what you believe in and you think you need to stand up and use that platform, use your voice, you feel like you have the following to get your point across, I think that's awesome. But I think sometimes, especially in collegiate athletics, as we're finding out now, this is with all the dollar signs being thrown around this time of year with the coronavirus, this is a billion-dollar industry. College football is going to move on whether Kansas State is a part of it or not. Whether these Pac-12 athletes, whatever percentage you want to slap on, you know, are for this movement, college football is going to move on without them. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't going to stop college football. Like, if it results in, let's just say 75 student athletes quitting and saying, you know what, we're done, we're not going to play, you can't. They're just going to go fill those scholarships with other players. You know what I mean? So it's just, again, it's great that they want to stand up and try and make change and make a movement, but at the same time, the train's not stopping. I mean, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and we're still trying to keep this train moving. So I understand it, and I hope that, you know, there comes some peace of mind, and there is some things that you get accomplished. As you said, there's some great points in there. There are things that haven't really been discussed that I think, you know, from an athlete's point of view, you know, could really help, and I think would be great things for athletes. But at the same time, if that's enough for you to wash your hands of it and say, you know what, I'm not going to play for you, at some point the coaches are going to say, okay, that opened, now we're at 84 scholarships, I'm just going to go get another one. You know what I mean? They're not just going to cancel the season because of it.
Yeah. All right, if you have some thoughts about that, 531-500-4686. That's our Woodhouse Auto Family hotline number, or it's also our U.S. Cellular text line if you want to send us a text on this topic. And, John, appreciate you bringing that up. That was a good thing for us to dive into here tonight on the piggyback off of what Adam had to say about that story going on in the Pac-12 Conference. Back to put a final segment in this hour next. Bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Greg Sharp, Ben Mclaughlin with you here on a Sports Nightly Monday night. We got a golf major coming up this week, Ben. The Pga Championship, the first golf major of the year, going to take place out at Harding Park in San Francisco. Great tournament yet over the weekend in Memphis. Justin Thomas held off, among others, Brooks Koepka and Phil Mickelson to win that tournament. So golf's got a major coming up. It's so weird. The golf calendar is going to have the PGA in August, which is kind of where it's always been until a year ago when they moved it to May. The U.S. Open is going to be in September. And the Masters is going to be in November. It's going to be weird. But
it is. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. All right, Board of Governors meeting tomorrow. Again, this is going to deal with the fall championships. There's also a line of thinking that if they cancel the fall championships, that the Big Five conferences may just break away, that this might be the wedge that breaks them away from the rest of the NCAA, and they say, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to manage our own sports. It's going to be the Big Five. We'll probably let Notre Dame jump in and maybe add a couple others to get it to a round number of 70 or something like that. Things could get really interesting here if the Power Five conferences don't agree with the decision. And remember, when this group gets together, the Power Five is outnumbered. There's more smaller schools that vote on these things, Ben, than the Power Five conferences, which are like 66 or 68 schools. This could be it. This could be a real wedge moment in college sports.
Well, you used the word I was about to use. This is driving a wedge further and further between the Power Five and every other school. And even, Greg, my brain went there as soon as these games started getting banged, as soon as they went to conference only. I'm like, you've got some schools that are paying other schools to depend on. I just don't know that. I don't know that they can just rely on that, and I don't know that these other schools can go ahead and afford to just be paying that out. So to me, it makes total sense. I'm scared of it. I don't necessarily want it. It would seem weird to have two different divisions essentially in college football, which would be so different. But I kind of see I could see it happening. I could see just the budget issues alone being enough to separate the top dogs from everybody else. I really could.
Ben, I remember being in Chicago. This is about 4 years ago for a Big Ten Media Days, and man, did I miss going there this year. And Jim Delaney always gives kind of his State of the Union address of Big Ten sports, and I remember standing in the back of the ballroom, and this one of the first times that I've heard this topic come up about the Big Five splitting away. And he talked about it, and he said a lot of the things you just said there. We have all the money. We know we have all the chips. We kind of want to set our own rules and not play by the rules for everybody else. And it's going to be something we're going to deal with in the decade that comes. Well, we're in the middle part of that decade now. And so tomorrow's meeting may really spur a lot of events for college sports much further beyond the coronavirus and what's going to happen this fall. So we'll be covering that tomorrow and seeing what comes out of that Board of Governors meeting tomorrow. Also, Jason Stark, longtime Major League Baseball writer, has a podcast up where he talks to one of Ben's favorite players, Andrew McCutchen, who said, quote, whoever on the Marlins decided to step out and not necessarily follow the health and safety protocol, that upsets me. What made me angry was that we ended up having to pay for that. Fair point.
Yeah, hard to argue that.
Yeah, because I think there are a lot of teams doing it right. There are a lot of teams that aren't having positive tests right now, and you have two, the Marlins and the Cardinals. The rumor around the Cardinals, although they're denying it, is that some of their players went out and hit a casino on one of their road trips here in the last week or so, and that's what caused the stir-up for the Cardinals. What an hour. Good stuff. Great having Ben back. Good to hear from Adam Rittenberg. Hopefully we're hearing from Adam on a weekly basis here in about a month with the start of college football season. Good stuff here on Sports Nightly.
Is Husker Sports with Sports Nightly. First, tonight's sports headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tim Curran. Tonight's headlines are brought to you by Cornerstone Bank. While times seem uncertain, Cornerstone Bank is here for you and your financial needs, just like they have been for the last 138 years. When times are difficult, there is no place like Nebraska. Bank on a solid foundation. Cornerstone Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. In Major League Baseball action, just two scores in progress right now. The Yankees lead the Phillies 3-1 at the end of the third. And the top of the third, it's the Mets with a 3-zip lead over the Braves. Heading on over to the National Basketball Association, a few games wrapped up earlier today. The Raptors took down the Heat by a final score of 107-103. The Nuggets took down the Thunder 121-113 in overtime. Another high-scoring affair between the Pacers and the Wizards, which saw the Pacers come out on top 111-100. And then at the half, right now, the Pelicans lead the Grizzlies by 7, 58-51, the score in that one. And in the NHL, got the qualifying round-robin games. Right now, the Dallas Stars lead the Las Vegas Golden Knights by a score of 3-1 with just over 2 minutes left in the second period. Some final scores for you from earlier today. Hurricanes top the Rangers 4-1. The Jets beat the Flames 3-2, and it was the Lightning who edged the Capitals 3-2 in double overtime. Live inside the Husker Sports Network studios, I'm Curran.
Your state, your team, your show. This is Sports Nightly.
Snap down, the kick is up, and the kick is good! Here's Lane! Huskers win it 13-10. They beat Northwestern and go to 4-2.
Now, let's check the pulse of Husker Nation with your hosts, Greg Sharp and Ben Mclaughlin.
We're back, hour number 2 of our Monday show of Sports Nightly. So glad you could spend some time with us here tonight on this fall-like day around the state of Nebraska. How nice did it feel being outside the last couple of days, a little reprieve from the heat. It'll be back. We all know it'll be back, but good to have you with us here tonight. All right, coming up this hour, we're going to continue our series of reports of around the Big Ten. We'll also continue our preseason top 25 countdown. We've made it up to number 15. We'll also have our weekend winners for you later on in the hour. But let's get the hour underway with a look around the league.
Tonight, we take a look around the Big Ten Conference. Brought to you by Sinclair Oil Gasoline and Oil Products. Fill up your life and your vehicle with Dino Care, Sinclair's top-tier gasoline.
Fields looks, throws, middle of the field, toward the end zone, touchdown, Olave! 27-yard.
Dodges a guy at the 1 and jumps into the end zone. Touchdown, Michigan!
Touchdown, Iowa! Stanley to Amir Smith, Marshall. 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Penn State! 72. Cone to the 10, cone to the 5, cone, touchdown, Wisconsin!
Tonight,
running back's Elijah Collins. Handoff to Elijah. Wants to run to his left. It does. Going to spread out that Illinois defense. They can't catch him. He's at the left pylon. He's into the end zone. Touchdown, MSU.
the Michigan State Spartans.
And here to talk to us about the Spartans, Hondo Carpenter from Spartan Nation. Hondo, great to catch up with you. Let's just start. Are the Spartans back working out? What is the status of the team right now?
Complete shutdown. Nothing's going on right now. They're in complete quarantine, and they are doing absolutely nothing. They've had players and staff test positive for COVID.
Where are they anticipating a restart date, or have they kept that close to the vest?
Hearing that they could potentially be starting back tomorrow, but again, at this point, it's only potential. Everyone, they just released numbers. They didn't say from what sport, and said they tested 50 staff in the athletic department. None of them tested positive, but 7 more athletes did. So waiting to find out what's next for Michigan State.
Not the way Mel Tucker would want to start a new era of football, but we talked with you a month or so ago, and you said that there's a good feel around Mel Tucker coming to Michigan State to take over this program. Has that continued throughout the summer?
Well, I'll tell you this. The good feeling is that Mark D'Antonio was gone, and him and his staff needed to go. But, Tucker comes in, and then COVID hits, so he got no spring. D'Antonio, in my opinion, selfishly waited until basically signing day to retire, so he didn't get to go do anything with the recruiting class. And now then they lose spring, and then they lose their summer workouts because of the COVID quarantine. Everything that could go wrong for him has, and it's been tough for him, but nothing that he's done. He's done a lot to reach out to fans and to a fan base. But, yeah, they're excited that it's a new breath of fresh air. But to be very honest, Michigan State is in a spot that they're buried pretty deeply, and they're going to be stuck there for a while.
Let's start with the quarterback. Give me the breakdown of that position. Looks to be wide open going into this season.
Yeah, Rocky Lombardi is the guy that I think if they polled players who they would want, Rocky is the best quarterback that they have. But I've heard now from 2 different people, some of the thinking internally is, we have so many areas to rebuild. Do we go with a younger quarterback? Because that obviously will buy some more time from fans while we rebuild. Or do we go with Rocky? If it's based purely on the best player, Rocky Lombardi's their quarterback. If it's based upon a future eyes to the future, then they very well possibly could go younger. That's going to be the biggest question mark on a team that's loaded with question marks. If they go with a young quarterback, it's Mel Tucker waving the flag saying, listen, we know we're buried. D'Antonio left us in a hole. If they come out and Lombardi's there, then it's them saying, okay, we're going to still try to compete and do our best now.
Do you think with Jay Johnson as the OC that the offense opens up compared to what we've been accustomed to from the Spartans?
If Barney the dinosaur was the new offensive coordinator, the offense would improve. It was a joke and an embarrassment, and if it was arrested for being a Power 5 offense, there would not have been enough evidence to convict it. Jay Johnson is a very good offensive coordinator, so he was a very good hire. Yes, I still think that they're going to be a team that's obviously focused on running first, but this is going to absolutely open up literally just about anyone they hired would have been an improvement, but they got a good one in Jay. But I will tell you this very quickly. Switched over the other side of the ball, and they absolutely got themselves a terrific defensive coordinator from Kansas State. This is a guy that was in North Dakota. I think he's one of the rising stars in the profession. I think he's a lot like Pat Narduzzi. This is a guy I don't expect to be at Michigan State long. I think he'll be head coaching soon.
Yeah, Scotty Hazeltine is the DC. He was with Chris Climate at Kansas State last year. Did a great job with them. Love the beard, by the way, of Scotty Hazeltine. Let's go back to offense. You've got a terrific back in Collins who came within just a couple of yards of 1,000 yards. You got a lot of experience along the offensive line, relatively speaking. This should be a group that could run the ball, I would think, Hondo, right?
You would think so, but here's the problem. I mean, you've got some really talented offensive linemen that other schools wanted, but the coaching at Michigan State has been deplorable. I'll give you an example. Last year, a very well-known high school coach called me, and he said, when you're at practice today, tell my kid, and not his son, but one that played for him, to call me. And so I saw the kid, and I said, call him. He goes, I'm not calling him. I know what he wants to talk about. And I go, what? And he goes, I'm not doing anything like I was taught in high school. The problem is they're telling me here not to do it. I mean, that's how bad it was. It was horrible. And so you got guys that have to go back again and just be retaught. And so there's just so far to come, and there's been no on-field. It's all been Zoom meetings. And you know this. You can do a lot in a Zoom meeting. I'm not minimizing them. It's better than nothing. But you can't teach foot placement. You can't teach hand-to-hand combat. And, you know, Nebraska fans know that better than anybody because that's offensive lineman you. And you just some things you got to sweat and fight and scrap, and they just haven't been able to do it. So, again, anybody that's reasonable would tell you that if Mel Tucker somehow got this team, and they're not going to play 12 games, so to me this is even out the door, but if they got them to a bowl game in a normal year with 6 wins, it'd be as good of a coaching job as D'Antonio did the year they won the Rose Bowl, and people said if there had been a playoff, they would have beat Jameis Winston for the title. That's how bad things are. I think this is a year in East Lansing they chalk up and just say it's a wasted year.
Hondo Carpenter with us from Spartan Nation. We're previewing Michigan State in our Around the Big Ten reports here on Sports Alley. We mentioned Scotty Hazeltine, the new DC for Michigan State. What kind of talent is he inheriting on that side of the ball?
Well, the good news is any coaching that was worth anything other than Terrence Samuel, who's now out at UNLV, is on the defensive side. And Mel Tucker was wise to keep a lot of the really solid defensive coaches. They were still able to recruit. Now, a lot of good players didn't want to come to Michigan State at the end because they didn't want to be part of a defense where if you don't score, you don't win. But they still have some good guys there. The coaching has been very good. I think Michigan State's going to struggle on offense, and if their best players are on the defensive side of the ball, they just don't have a lot of them because a lot of good players were leaving there. And look what Penn State's doing in recruiting to the state of Michigan right now. They're destroying it because Michigan State created a vacuum because they were non-existent. So there's good players there, and I expect that if Michigan State's going to have any success, it's going to be with a defense that creates some turnovers and gives that offense a chance to punch it in and with some turnovers and get some success and get some confidence. That's going to be the strength of the Spartans. And when I say strength, that's like me. Well, I probably shouldn't say that on here, but let's just say that's not a pretty thing. If I'm in the room and I'm the prettiest guy, it means there's a lot of ugly people.
Hondo, I mean, being a head coach at this level, there's pressure. But in some ways, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, isn't this almost a free pass year for Mel Tucker because of the virus and the shutdown and all that? Isn't this kind of a free year for him?
Oh, it's a total free year. But let me explain another thing. Michigan State is all in on him. They threw the bank at him. He's now one of the highest paid coaches in America with one of the highest paid assistant coaching staff. And they're all in. I mean, Michigan State laid out the money for him. And if you know what, if he turns out to be as great as his pay is, he's going to be great. But they paid that kind of money for a coach with 1 year experience. Now, when they got Mark D'Antonio, he only had 3, and he did a very good job for a while. But, yes, he's going to get a break. But let me say this. If he comes and fails, Michigan State has hooked their whole entire ship dam. So he's going to get quite a more than just 1 year. And to him, that's good. But this is anyone with a brain, anyone who's being fair to Mel Tucker knows that this is a waste year for him. This is right. and it's just going to be bad. And, think about this one, my friend. Imagine if it's Nebraska-Iowa week, and all of a sudden Iowa has to quarantine. What are they going to do? I think it's going to be an off year for everybody, and if they end up moving it to the spring, which I'll just tell you, I've heard it from several athletic directors, not just in the Big Ten, but in several other conferences, that's a legitimate thought. If they have to do that, then all of a sudden, how fair is it if you're a school that loses 2 or 3 players, or as some SEC schools or ACC schools that say may lose as many as 12, that say I'm not playing because the NFL draft. I think it's going to be a waste year for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. Final thought, Hondo, how will history judge Mark D'Antonio?
Mark D'Antonio his legacy is going to be he built his kingdom and he destroyed his kingdom. That he had an opportunity to go down as one of the greatest coaches of all time at any level, and Mark D'Antonio's stubbornness destroyed his legacy, completely destroyed it. He did a lot of good things, and then, quite frankly, just relaxed and coasted and wouldn't fire people, wouldn't get rid of people, wouldn't make changes, and ran it right into the ground. As great as his highest point was, him taking the train and riding it right into the mountain was as spectacular, only that in a negative way. It's a sad story. As someone, I was at more of his games than he was because I went to every one while he was the head coach. He missed a couple with his heart attack. I was at practices, again, every game, home and away. It's a legacy that should have been great, and it's a story of what pride does. Mark D'Antonio started his legacy by calling out Michigan, saying pride comes before the fall. And in the end, it was his obituary to his career. Pride came before his fall.
Interesting. Hondo, great stuff as always. We appreciate it. Hopefully we're going to cover some games here in the next several months.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks. Hondo Carpenter, Spartan Nation, with us here on our Sports Nightly Hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto Family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. What a tough situation. Mel Tucker gets the job fairly late in the recruiting cycle. They don't get any spring practices in. They've been hit hard by the virus. They've now had to shut down these voluntary workouts for about 2 weeks now. I mean, you talk about a team and a program that's way behind the 8 ball and potentially 4.5 weeks out from a game. Whew, that is an uphill battle for the Spartans. All right, when we come back, we'll continue our preseason top 25 countdown. We made it to number 15. That's next. Break Sharp, Ben Mclaughlin with you, and time for us now to continue on our preseason top 25.
It's the Sports Nightly preseason top 25. Tonight.
From the right hash, Ellinger with it, turns, hands right side, Ingram breaks a tackle, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Texas. Keontae Ingram, a stiff arm, and on 4th and 3, number 26 takes it 26 yards for a Texas touchdown.
Number 15, the Texas Longhorns.
And here to talk about the Longhorns, Brian Davis from the Boston American Statesman. Texas coming off of an 8-4 season a year ago where they beat Utah in the Alamo Bowl. And yet, Brian, Coach Herman was not loving all the things that were happening with the football team and changes all the coordinators. That's a big move by a coach like this. How has that gone since he made those moves?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the culmination of 3 sort of so-so seasons. You know, it's like, hey, this really, it's working okay, but could it work better? I think that was the thinking. And, 7 new assistants total are in for this year. But obviously, new offensive coordinator Mike Gersich and the new defensive coordinator Chris Ash, those are the ones getting all the headlines. And we'll see. Tom had been calling the plays. He took play calling duties away from Tim Beck, and then he wants to sort of go back to being the walk-around head coach. And so that's why you're going to see Gersich take over the offense this year.
Will people notice more of a difference on offense or defense, do you think?
Well, from Texas's standpoint, it better be defense. They better have some improvement on defense. And I think it's going to start with going back to a four-man front, taking Joseph Osai, probably their best linebacker, moving him to sort of an outside stand-up defensive end type of position. They're calling it the jack position. But basically it's putting what they hope is someone who can be an elite-level pass rusher off the edge. You look at their stats the past year, they were terrible, just terrible at getting to the quarterback, ninth in the league in sacks. And so they've got to find a way to put more pressure on quarterbacks. Average Joes looked like Johnny Unitas against this team last year. So that was a real problem they had to fix.
Chris Ash, we're real familiar with in the Big Ten, being the head coach at Rutgers, stints at Ohio State and Wisconsin as well. And it looks like he's inheriting some talent. In your estimation, was it a talent problem in the last couple of years, or was it more scheme-related?
That is the beauty's in the eye of the beholder type of thing. I personally think that the three-man front did not work the past 3 years. I don't think they recruited very well at defensive line. I thought linebackers were up and down overall, but I really liked the defensive backfield. The problem last year, though, is that the defensive backfield, one of the strongest areas of the team, was totally almost wiped out by injuries. And so you take all those factors, you add it up, and it's not good. Brandon Jones, one of their best safeties, is now in the NFL. And they've had some other guys moving around, but DeMarvion Overshown is solid. They really like Deshaun Jameson at corner. I definitely think they have got the right people in place, but getting all 11 to perform is going to be the big key.
Visiting again with Brian Davis from the Austin American-Statesman. We've got Texas at number 15 in our preseason top 25. Let's go to offense. Cannot believe Sam Ellinger is still here. He's one of those guys you feel like has been in college football for 7 or 8 years, now finally a senior. Talk about his progression as a quarterback and then lay out some of the weapons he's going to have around him this fall.
Well, if I told you that Sam Ellinger was going to finish his career, most likely number 2 in almost every quarterback category that Texas had, you'd think, wow, that's a pretty good career, right? That's amazing, right? Well, he's done all that, and he has not won a championship. He's only won one game of major significance, and that was the Sugar Bowl, which, that was just sort of a nice glamour game that really didn't, wasn't for the CFP or mean anything. So, if Sam wants to be like Vince, like Colt McCoy, that level of quarterbacks in school history, you got to win a Big 12 title, and he knows that. He's got to get it done this year. I think he's got a lot of good tools around him. I really like Brennan Eagles out wide. They've got some younger receivers, Pouncey, Jake Smith, that I think are going to surprise some people. But the key to me is going to be, can they block well and can they get just a solid running game? Keontae Ingram is the incumbent guy in the backfield, but they really, really like Bijan Robinson, a 5-star kid from Arizona, one of the nation's top running back recruits. To me, that's where they need to show some real improvement. Can they establish a ground game without having Ellinger be such a vital part of the running game? You keep him safe, you keep him upright, and then I think the offense should be able to flow more freely.
You mentioned you're now the offensive coordinator. What do you think he adds wrinkle-wise to this offense that we didn't see the last couple of years with the Beck-Herman combo?
I think for that, you have to look at what happened during his time at Oklahoma State, right? I think the stats are during his 3 years at Oklahoma State, during his 3-year stretch, they averaged over 40 points a game, right, during 3 specific years. I think he was there 6 years total, but they averaged 40 points a game. They had a great quarterback, they had a great running back, and great receiver. All 3 of those guys made it to the league. And so, to me, what has frustrated me about Texas's offense is that it's like everybody gets a participation ribbon. Okay, here's your 2 opportunities, and here's your 2 chances, and here's your 3 catches. Forget that. Play the best players. Throw it to the best guys. This is college football. This is not the NFL. Get open, throw them the ball, go make a play. It's not supposed to be that difficult.
Yeah. All right, handicap for us, the top of the league. Everybody's been chasing Oklahoma for a while, but that number 2 spot, and we certainly feel like Texas is right in there maybe with the Cowboys and the Cyclones. How do you see this thing going?
If you'd have told me in April and May, what's my preseason poll, to me it's Oklahoma number 1, clear cut. I think Oklahoma State number 2, and then Texas number 3. And the reason why I now have a question mark on that is because of what happened in Stillwater over the summer with Mike Gundy. As this whole Black Lives Matter movement takes hold and the way that his players sort of had a mini revolt on him, and then Shuba Hubbard had to put out this hostage video that he was still all in with the program. I mean, what's really going to happen with the Cowboys when action really heats up? Are they really going to play hard for that coach? I don't know. And so that's why, to me, Oklahoma State is now a giant wild card in my mind, with Texas there and Iowa State fourth. I really, really like Matt Campbell. I think he's one of the best, brightest up-and-comers in college football right now. And quite honestly, I'm stunned he is still at Iowa State going into this year.
Yeah. Could that be a play-in game on Thanksgiving if they keep the schedule the same with Texas in Stillwater?
I mean, it definitely could. There's no question about it. I mean, whenever that, if they rearrange the schedule, whenever that game is, I definitely think that's going to be a huge tiebreaker type of game. And I'll say this: the team that I always label as the group that's going to mess it up for everyone is TCU. I mean, I know no one ever talks about Gary Patterson and their crew, and for good reason. But darn it, if that guy doesn't crank out solid defense all the time, and they're always, always competitive, TCU is always my team to watch. That'll surprise.
Brian, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hopefully you're covering some games here in about a month. I think we're all keeping our fingers crossed.
All of us, no doubt, no doubt.
There he is, Brian Davis from the Austin American-Statesman, joining us on our Sports Sunday Hotline, brought to you by the Woodhouse Auto family, bringing you more choices in brands, locations, and service. Experience the difference. Purchase with confidence. This is Woodhouse. Greg Sharp now joined by Ben Mclaughlin. You like Texas, I mean, and they make the changes to the coordinators. Chris Ash, we know really well. He's a very good defensive mind. If they can get that defense better, I think this could be a team that can make it to that Big 12 championship game in December.
Yeah, I think their defense, I think, is the next thing that needs to turn the corner. I think they really need to find a way to put a staple on that side of the ball. They get a couple of those safeties back, which both of those guys were big time commits to the program with Stearns and Foster. 9 starters back on that side, so you like their ability to take a step forward. I loved Devin Duvernay on their team last year. I mean, that he was J.D. Spielman and Stanley Morgan wrapped up into one. He was a big play guy. He was our slot guy. Caught like 1 billion balls for them. He's going to be a big loss. But Sam Ellinger is one of the greats that they've had in a long time. It's about time they've had some stability at the quarterback position, and they finally have that. That guy's a rock, and he is beloved by the Texas Longhorn fans. So I think they have some parts. They get Brennan Eagles back, who I think is a great receiver. Tariq Black is a name that will sound familiar to Husker fans, a transfer from Michigan. If he can find a way to stay healthy, they still have some weapons. So one thing that Texas was able to do a lot better last year, Greg, than they've been able to do in prior years is run the football. And they got a couple of those running backs back as well. I'd expect Keontae Ingram to near 1,000 yards again this year. But they're close. I don't know that they're quite back. It's been a long time since Joe Tessitore told us that Texas was back, and I think Coach Herman has underwhelmed, but I haven't given up on him yet. I think there's still a chance for him to do what we all thought he may when he got hired in Austin.
Well, I think he knew the first couple of years they weren't quite where they needed to be to challenge Oklahoma stride for stride in the Big 12, and so he goes and changes coordinators. He didn't lay back. You could kind of say the same thing happened in Lincoln, where Scott Frost makes the move at offensive coordinator. Defensively, Ben, they were 97th in total defense a year ago. That better come up a long ways if they're going to make that Big 12 title game and be at least the number 2 team in that league.
Right, because it's hard to go stride for stride with Oklahoma on the offensive side. Sooner or later, you got to find a way to rely on something else. And something and hang your hat. I mean, he talked about TCU, and I think that's something that TCU has been able to do at times, and that's why they can beat some of those teams is because they play good defense. So we've seen Texas be competitive with Oklahoma. They lost a tight one with the Sooners last year, beat them the year before that. But to do that on a consistent level is very difficult to do, and it's very hard to do without a defense.
They were 7-5 in the regular season, and they needed walk-off field goals to beat both Kansas and Kansas State. So, they kind of salvaged a little bit at the end by winning the Alamo Bowl over Utah in pretty convincing fashion. Then he made the changes to the coaching staff. I'm with you. I'm not ready to stamp them as being back, but we like them enough with all the things that they have back, and I think we also appreciate Chris Ash as a defensive coach that they will be better defensively to put them at number 15. And it makes me a little nervous, but we got them at 15.
And a lot of this talking, Greg, when we have these conversations, center around one position, and that's quarterback. And Sam Ellinger is as reliable as they come in that regard. So I think it's just huge for them to get him back and to be a part of this team. And if they are going to be back, he would be one that could take them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. All right, again, thanks to Brian Davis for being with us here on the program. All right, 531-500-4686. That's our new Woodhouse Auto Family Hotline number, 531, the new area code in the state. 500-4686. It's also our U.S. Cellular text line. So if you want to send us a text, you can do that and be a part of the discussion tonight as well. Teddy Greenstein, our good buddy who comes on Thursday nights, has an interesting tweet out. We'll talk about that next. Big shot Ben Mclaughlin with you. Teddy Greenstein, who usually is with us on Thursday nights, tweeted within the last half hour. Here's the latest on Big Ten football scheduling. It will not be front-loaded with divisional games. We've been kind of told they're going to play the divisional games up front to make sure they get them in. Teddy's saying that's not the case, and the number of off weeks depends on whether they get games started on September the 5th. This kind of falls in line with Bill Moose, who kind of wants those divisional games kind of in the middle part of the schedule. He wants a couple of cross-division games to start and then go to the divisional games. A lot of people, if you looked at the Pac-12 schedule, Ben, that came out last week, they're starting with their rivalry games in week 1, Arizona State, UCLA, USC. But according to Teddy sources, they're not going to do that in the Big Ten. Surprised?
No, but I also didn't have expectations. So, I don't know that I would have been surprised either way. What do I prefer? I'm not sure. I at this point, Greg, I just want it to happen. So I don't care if it's front-loaded, back-loaded, in the middle-loaded. It doesn't matter. As long as it's relatively the same for both divisions and all the division teams, I'm good with whatever. I think it would, in terms of intrigue, I think it would add a level of intrigue if they were kind of sprinkled throughout and it wasn't just, all right, your first 6 are going to be division or your first 5 are going to be division or whatever, and then, maybe save a rivalry for the end. I'm okay with mixing it up, but at this point, let's just get them played.
I agree, and I have a feeling the television partners are weighing in on this. They want to spread out some of the marquee matchups throughout the calendar and say, well, you can't put 3 really high marquee games in week 3. You'd burn a lot of our things, so they want to, I think, try to spread those out. Also, we've been waiting for this all day long. The Big 12 presidents have now voted, according to multiple media outlets, they have voted for a +1 model. So play the 9 conference games and 1 non-conference game for the football season. This would protect Oklahoma and Kansas, who both have added week 0 games. Oklahoma asked if they could move their Missouri State game from September the 5th till the last Saturday of August, and KU scheduled an FCS opponent for the last Saturday of August. They got approval to do that last week from the NCAA competition committee. So now everybody's got to figure out what non-conference game to keep. For those two, that's what it would be, those schools from the Missouri Valley Conference to do that. So there we go. The only one that has not come out with something, Ben, is the Big Ten Conference here.
Yeah, I can't say it's surprising. The other thing that I think is worth bringing up here is Kevin Warren is still new on the job. I mean, this isn't. It's not like, you know, we even had a call today talking about this. This isn't Jim Delaney, who has umpteen years of experience and, you know, knows he has a reputation and, you know, doesn't really have, you know, the pressure of people judging him one way or the other. I think as a first year anything, that's always kind of in your mind. What are people going to think of me if I make this decision? Do I have that reputation? Do I have that rapport with my colleagues? I think I think that's worth mentioning, but I also think it's a bit dangerous, Greg. Big Ten was the last conference to pull the plug in March when it came time to athletics, and
right.
You know, you don't want to develop that reputation either as just kind of the conference that sits back and waits. So I think it's a fine line, but, you know, Commissioner Warren, I know, has people around him that are help navigating him in the right way and doing what they can to provide the assistance necessary. But yeah, I mean, it's not exactly the easiest first year on the job, that's for sure.
Ryan in Nashville tweeted at us, Ben. He said, if the season is canceled, would it be possible to have scrimmages against local competition, the Iowa States, the Kansas, so teams are seeing live action, no fans, just get the school lawyers to approve it? Huskers need a gauge on where they stack up against other competition. I think that'd be a really, really long shot if something like that were to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same risk, you know, right? I mean, what would be the difference of playing, I mean, other than just the number of games? If the reason you're canceling it is health and safety of players, isn't playing Iowa State or Kansas State or South Dakota State or whoever, you're still providing that same risk. So, yeah, I mean, I think if they're going to bang it, they're going to bang it all together and not let that happen. But good thought, though.
Hondo, who was on earlier in the hour, says he's hearing it from multiple athletic directors that spring football is a real possibility. And we're hearing the exact opposite here. Bill Moose is like, that is just not even plausible. We've talked to former players, some of our own that are on our staff, and Brendan Stein, Jeremiah Searles, that just say, man, I just don't see how you could do that at all. I just think you can do that in some sports. I don't think you can do that in college football and then come back next fall and go again. I think you could do it in volleyball. I think you could do it in soccer. I don't think you could do it in football.
Greg, my question is, if there's no vaccine in the spring, what makes it different playing in the spring and makes it than it is in the fall? You know what I mean? Like, are we really expecting things to be that drastically different in the spring? I don't see it happening at all. I mean, I truly do not see the spring season as an option at all. So maybe he's talking to different athletic directors. I'm not sure, but I'm not sold on that idea, and I don't know that very many are around college football.
Hearing from Hondo, Erlen, that program going through a transition with a new coach, got no spring football in, and they've been shut down a lot this summer because of positive cases within their own camp, more so probably than any other school in the league. I mean, it could be, if there are games played this fall, it could be disastrous for Michigan State because they just don't even know what they're doing yet with their new coaching staff. I mean, I feel bad for them, but yeah, it could be where, you know, here at Nebraska, as far as we know, the workouts have been going on. A lot of schools, sounds like the workouts have been kind of proceeding as usual.
Yeah, Michigan State's a program that's kind of in flux as it is, and then you throw this kind of on top of it. It's treacherous times in East Lansing, for sure. I would wonder about them, too, the first couple of weeks.
All right, we'll see. Teddy Greenside with the latest tweet saying that now that the scheduling model that they're looking at is not front-loading divisional games, but maybe some crossover games to start and the divisional games sprinkled throughout. So we'll see. I mean, that's the latest. Again, now the Big 12 coming out with their conference plus one non-con. The Big Ten is the only one of the Power 5 conferences to not make a comment about scheduling for the upcoming fall. All right, when we come back, we'll have this weekend's weekend winners. It's next. Sports Island here on the Husker Sports Network. Tomorrow night, we'll continue our position breakdowns. We're going to break down the special teams unit, talk about a lot of question marks, a lot of new names for kicker, punters. So we'll delve into that and then rank out where we've put Nebraska in that phase of the game with the other teams of the Big Ten West. We'll also have a top 10 topic. Do we have any thoughts on that? You've been gone. You probably stockpiled your top 10 thoughts over the last couple of weeks.
That's what I did. Every diaper that I changed, I came up with a new top 10 list.
Oh, good.
So,
Good.
We've got a couple hundred of those.
Well, we always kind of stumble into something. So we'll have that for you tomorrow night. We'll continue our preseason top 25 countdown up to number 14 tomorrow night. So looking forward to all that. All right, let's get into the weekend winners. Ben, lead us off.
Yeah, I've got the Yankees on right now. Not a Yankees fan at all. Don't even necessarily care for this player too much, but got to be Aaron Judge. I mean, home run in 5 straight games. Dude's absolutely mashing. Was injured last year for a good chunk of the year, and he's starting this year with reckless abandon. I mean, he is absolutely murdering the ball for the Yankees, who are starting the year red hot at 7-1 and likely going to go 8-1 with a win over the Phillies tonight. So Aaron Judge for me. Thankfully, I haven't had to run up against him in fantasy yet, and hopefully he cools off when I do. I
saw a graphic that he has the most home runs this early in the season of any Yankee, and bettered the start that A-Rod had during one season, and some guy named Babe Ruth had one, I think, in the 32 season. So that is tall cotton. He is just crushing the ball right now, seeing it really well. He played at Haymarket Park, you know. He played for Fresno State.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
The craziest thing about that is none of us –
remember,
there are some players that you leave the ballpark going, yeah, we'll probably hear that name again or see that guy again. He was not one of them.
No.
He was just another dude.
Other than, man, that guy's really tall.
Yeah, he's big guy.
That's really all you would think of. Okay, Tim, how about your weekend winner?
Well, Ben stole my weekend winner, typical, but I do have 2, don't worry. Begrudgingly have to admit, Iowa men's basketball are weekend winners because Luka Garza announced he's coming back, and guys, I hope you didn't miss this. Mississippi is accepting new submissions from the public to update their flag, and one of the submissions, and this is real, you can go on their website and look at the submissions, is just that picture of Elijah Moore in the Egg Bowl doing his infamous dog celebration.
No. Really?
And that is one of the submissions for the new state flag. It has my vote. I don't know if I have a say. I don't know if they're voting on this, but that wins. That's a great
Even
flag.
though it costed the Rebels the game?
Probably a Mississippi State fan, I would imagine, is this person, but it's all good stuff.
That's crazy.
Wow. We are going to do a recap maybe tomorrow about the teams in the Big Ten and who lost guys early to the NBA and who didn't. You're right, that was a big get for Fran McCaffrey to keep Luka Garza. Iowa's going to be a top 15, maybe top 10 team with him coming back next year. Michigan State loses Xavier Tillman, but Aaron Henry is coming back for his year, so they did okay with that. The Big Ten in hoops is going to be unbelievable. There are going to be 3 or 4 teams on the top 15 in the Big Ten in hoops.
I saw an absolutely fantastic tweet, and of course it's going to look like sour grapes coming from a Husker, but so I don't even think it was a Husker fan that tweeted it, and it was like, does anybody else find it disconcerting that Iowa is applauding a player that led them to a 20-11 record and a 4-way tie for 5th place, announcing he's back like Michael Jordan, just because he says that was his quote, "I'm back." I think it was a Cyclone fan that tweeted it, but I thought that was rather funny.
He was the college player of the year, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think Obi might have clipped him in a couple of them, but he was in the top, and that's the obvious retort, right? He's one of the best players in the country, but I thought it was funny.
Yeah, so we'll recap all that for you in a future segment here on Sports Line. I'm going off the sports page for my weekend winner. I'm going the SpaceX, which came back to Earth after spending several weeks up at the International Space Station. It was the first American splashdown from space in 45 years since U.S. astronauts have splashed down coming back from space. They're now going to up that. The next launch, they're going to send 4 up on the SpaceX things and try to increase it so that they can start taking multiple people up into space. Would you do that? Would if somebody came to you and says you can go on the next launch, would you do it?
No. I'm out.
Really?
I don't know that my body could handle it. Like, I don't even like roller coasters, let alone floating around in space. I don't think I can make it.
One of the last Modern Families, that show wrapped up after, I think, 11 seasons this past spring. One of the last ones, Josh Gad made a special appearance, and he comes up to he was like a next-door neighbor of theirs for a while. He came up to Phil Dunphy, and Josh Gad's character had become kind of like an Elon Musk, and he wanted to take Phil to space, and Phil's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go. I can't do that. I don't want to die in space.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there you go. Have you started the new Last Chance U that dropped last week?
I have. I think I'm 3 episodes in. It's so contrastly different than the other two. I mean, you could draw comparisons from East Mississippi and Indy because their head coaches were so similar. This one is so different for multiple reasons. I mean, the location, you're going from middle of nowhere Kansas and middle of nowhere Mississippi to Oakland. I mean, it's everything about it's a little different, but it's still entertaining.
And I did read that HBO is going to start their Hard Knocks with the Rams, I think, in a week.
Isn't it a joint, Rams and Chargers?
I think so. Yeah.
They just did the Rams not that long ago.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Also, I started Space Force on Netflix the other day.
Couldn't help. What'd you think?
Well, I'm only an episode or two. I'm two episodes in.
I made it 1. I'm like, this ain't for me.
Yeah. Josh fought it through. He thought it was okay, I think, toward the end. So I'm going to hang with it. I'm a big Steve Carell fan.
All right.
He was on some other comedy show that wasn't bad. Good hour. Thanks to Hondo Carpenter and Brian Davis for adding some expertise into Michigan State and Texas as we continue to preview college football, which we hope starts in a few weeks.